Hello. Uh, this is Sunday evening, that is, here in the United States. I'm reading the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, and I'm going to be reading chapter one here, as I've done what I call the early part of this deal, actually the forward or introduction earlier tonight. And I want to conclude this particular Edward Bernays and his book here in chapter one. So the first part, actually, the introduction, was written by another gentleman here, explained certain things, and then we're gonna get into the meat of what I call Bernays' ideas, which is called organizing chaos. The conscious, intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic societies. Those who manipulate those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed, our minds molded, our tastes formed, our ideas are suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is a logical result of the way in which our democracy society is organized. Vast numbers of human beings must cooperate in this matter if they are to live together as a smoothly functional society. Our invisible governors are in many cases unaware of the identity of their fellow members of the interchamber. They govern us by their qualities of natural leadership, their ability to supply needed ideas, and by their key positions in this social structure. Whatever attitude one chooses towards this condition, it remains a fact that in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, in our social conduct or in our ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relative small number of persons. That is a tripling fraction of 120 million people who understand the mental processes and social patterns of the masses. It is they who pull the wires which control the public mind, who harness old social forces and contrive new ways to bind and guide the world. Interesting words by using bind and also pull the wires. It is not usually realized how necessary these invisible governors are to the orderly functioning of our group life. In theory, every citizen may vote for whom he pleases. Our Constitution does not envisionate political parties as part of the mechanism of government, and its framers seem not to have pictured to themselves the existence in our national politics of anything like the modern political machine. Um, well, this was built in the 1928s, but he has actually, when you think about it, um, I remember taking a political science class in college, and we dealt with a particular class with the event of what we call television. The television also changed the dramatic approach of also politics and also propaganda because they began to broadcast what I call the conventions of the two major parties here in the United States, Republican and Democratic parties, and that began to use a way of swaying people how to vote for them also. But the American voters soon found that without organization and direction, their individual votes cast perhaps for dozens of hundreds of candidates would produce nothing but confusion. That's interesting the way he says that. Invisible government in the shape of rudimentary political parties arose almost overnight. Ever since then, we have agreed for the sake of simplicity and practicality that party machines should narrow down the field of choices to two candidates, or most three or four. In theory, every citizen makes up his mind on public questions and matters of private conduct. In practice, if all men had to study for themselves the abstruse economy, political, and ethical data involved in every question, they would find it impossible to come to a conclusion without anything. We have voluntarily agreed to let an invisible government sift the data and high spot the outstanding issues so that our field of choice shall be narrow to practically proportions. From our leaders and the media they use to reach the public, we accept the evidence and the demarcation of issues bearing upon public questions from some ethical teacher, be it minister, a favorite essayist, or merely a prevailing opinion. We accept a standardized code of social conduct to which we conform most of the time. This is what is echoing this book. Can't think of it right off the top of my head right now, but it was also this is how they forge culture. This is how they forge culture in our society, and actually, it is the law itself that causes us not to be really real in our society. In theory, everybody buys the best and cheapest commodities offered him on the market. In practice, if everyone went around pricing and chemically tasting before purchasing the dozen of soaps or fabrics or brands of bread which are for sale, economy of life would be hopelessly jammed. To avoid such confusion, society consents to have its choice narrowed to ideas and objects brought to its attention through propaganda of all kinds. There is consequently a vast and continuous effort going on to capture our minds in the interest of some policy or commodity or idea. Yeah, it's interesting. He uses the word captures the mind. It's a very strong word in saying this. It might be better to have, instead of propaganda and special pleading, committees of wise men who would choose our rulers, dictate. This is amazing. Instead of propaganda and special pleading, committees of wise men who would choose our rulers, dictate our conduct, private and public, and decide upon the best types of clothes for us to wear and the best kind of food for us to eat. But we have chosen the opposite method, that of open competition. We must find a way to make free competition function with reasonable smoothness. To achieve this, society has continued to permit free competition to be organized by leadership and propaganda. Most of this is actually talking about what I call the industrial um, revolution that takes place, because there's a massive change that takes place after after the war between the states, and with that, you're going to see what I call a consensus view here. Starting this is it's no longer the public is now becoming a buyer, as you would say. That would not have worked out before the Industrial Revolution. It wouldn't have, because people didn't buy things like that. People tend to make their own products. If you lived on a farm or property, you had chickens, you had pigs, you may have a cow, you had crops, such and such. There was no need for what I call these other things that we now have in modern society. So what's happened simply is this a rapid change is that Americans began to make products that were supposed to make it easier for us or quicker for us to do, such as washing clothes um, and having a washing machine, when in reality, that was a long time ago. Simply, it was a different particular apparatus. You see, no one worked outside they worked on their farm. They didn't work at a factory, you see. And so it's amazing how America has changed in that rapid deal, after the war between states. And there were still factories. Don't get me wrong, there were factories such and such in the South, although far less than they were up north. Already, the Industrial Revolution already taken place basically in 1820s and 1830s in the North. But it took 20 to 30, maybe 40 years later that actually involved the South, so to speak. So there's a different deals per se. But it's just interesting how he talks about this. Instead of propaganda, we have people doing these things. It's almost as though he's actually endorsing oligarchy or someone actually to rule our lives. So that is the better way of doing things. You can see that attitude already reflected in this book. Some of the phenomena of this process are criticized: the elimination of news, the inflation of personality, and the greater ballyhoo by which politicians and commercial products and social ideas are brought to the consciousness of the masses. The instrument by which public opinion is organized and focused may be misused, but such organization and focusing are necessary to an orderly life. As civilization has become more complex, and as the need for invisible government has been increasingly demonstrated, the technical means have been invented and developed by which opinion may be regimented. With the printing press and the newspaper, the railroad, the telephone, the telegraph, the radio, and the airplanes, ideas can be spread rapidly and even instantaneously all over this whole of America. H.G. Wells senses the vast potentialities of these inventions when he writes in the New York Times. Modern means of communication, the power to afford by print, telephone, wireless, and so forth, are rapidly putting through directive strategic strategy of technical conceptions to a great number of cooperating centers. Of getting quick replies and effective discussion have opened up a new world of political processes. Ideas and phrases can now be given an effectiveness greater than the effectiveness of any personality and stronger than any sectional interest. The common design can be documented and sustained against perversion and betrayal. It can be elaborated and developed steadily and widely without personal, local, and sexual misunderstandings. What Mr. Wells says of political processes is equally true of commercial and social processes in all manufacturing of mass activity. The grouping and affiliation of societies, they are no longer subject to a local and sectional limitation. When the Constitution was adopted, the unit of organization was the village community, which produced the greater part of its own necessary commodities and generated its group ideas and opinions by personal contact and discussion among its citizens. But today, because ideas can be instantaneously transmitted to any distance and to any number of people, this geographic integration has been served supplementally by many other kinds of groupings, so that persons having the same ideas, interests may be associated and regimented for common action, even though they live thousands of miles apart. It's extremely difficult to realize how many and diverse are these cleavages in our society. They may be social, political, and economical, racial, religious, or ethical, with hundreds of subdivisions of each. In the World Almanac, for example, the following groups are listed under the A's. The League to Abolish Capital Punishment, Association to Abolish War, American Institute of Accountants, Actors Equity Association, Actuaries Association of America, International Advertising Association, National Aeronautic Association, Albany Institute of History and Art, Amen Corner, American Academy in Rome, American Antiquarian Society, League for American Citizenship, American Federation of Labor, Amore, AMRC, Rosicrucian Order, the Antarion Club, the American Irish Historical Association, the Anti-Cigarette League, the Anti-Profanity League, Archaeological Association of America, National Archery Association, Aryan ARION Singing Society, American Astronomical Association, Ashire Breeders Association, Aztec Club of 1847. There are many more under the A section of this very limited list. The American Newspaper Annual and Directory for 1928 lists 22,128 periodical publications in America. I've selected at random the N's published in Chicago. They are Narod, N-A-R-O-D, Bohemian Daily Newspaper, Narod Polski, a Polish monthly, NARD, Pharmaceutical, National Corporation Reporter, National Culinary Process for Hotel Chefs, National Dog Journal, National Drug Clerk, National Engineer, National Brochure, National Hotel Reporter, National Income Tax Magazine, National Jewelry, National Journey of Chiropractor, National Livestock Producer, National Miller, National Nut News, Natural Poultry, Butter and Egg Bulletins, National Provisional for Meat Packers, National Real Estate Journey, National Retail Clother, National Retail Lumber Dealer, National Safety News, National Spiritualist, National Underwriter, and National Health. The Notice Genius Lithuanian Daily Newspaper, Newcomer, Republican Weekly for Italians, Daily News, The New World, Catholic World Weekly, North American Banker, and North American Veterinarian. The circulation of some of these publications is astounding. The National Livestock Producers has a sworn circulation of 155,978 people. The National Engineer of 20,328. The New World estimated circulation of 67,000. The greater number of the periodicals list chosen at random from among 22,128 It has that circulation of assessed of 10,000 people. The diversity of these publications is evident at a glance, yet they can only faintly suggest the multitude of cleavages which exist in our society, along which flow information and opinion carry authority to the individual groups. Here are the conventions scheduled for Cleveland, Ohio, recorded in a single recent issue of World Convention dates, a fraction of 5,500 conventions and rallies scheduled. The Employing Photo Engraver Association of America, the Outdoor Writer Association, the Knights of St. John, the Walter League, the National Knitted Outwear Association, the Knights of St. Joseph, the Royal Order of Sphinx, the Mortgage Banker Association, the International Association of Public Employee Officers, the Kiwanis Club of Ohio, the American Photo Engravers Association, the Cleveland Auto Manufacturers Show, the American Society of Heating and Ventilation Engineers. Other conventions to be held in 1928 were those of the Association of Limb Manufacturers Association, the National Circus Fan Association of America, the American National Path Association, the American Trap Shooting Association, the Texas Fort Lord Association, the Hotel Breeder, the Fox Breeder Association, the Insecticide and Disinfectant Association, the National Association of Egg Case and Egg Case Filler Manufacturers, the American Bottler of Carbonated Beverages, and the National Pickle Packers Association, not to mention the Terrapin Derby, one of them with banquets and orators attached. And all these thousands of formal organizations and institutions could be listed, and no complete list has ever been made. They would still represent but a part of those existing less formally, but leaving vigorous lives. Ideas are sifted and opinions stereotyped in the neighborhood bridge club. Leaders assert their authority through community drives and amateur theatricals. Thousands of women may unconsciously belong to a sorority which follows the fashion set by a single society leader. Life, saturated, expressed the idea in a reply which is represented American is given to the Britisher who praises this country for having no upper or lower class or caste. Yeah, all we have is the 400, the white collar men, the bootleggers, the Wall Street barons, the criminals, the DAR, that is the Daughters of American Revolution, the KKK, the colonial dames, the Masons, the Kiwanis, the Rotarians, the Knights of Columbus, the Elks, the Censors, the Condottius, the Morons, heroes like Lindy, the WCTU, politicians, Mennonites, the Boos, immigrants, broadcasters, and the rich and the poor. Yet it must be remembered that these thousands of groups interlace. John Jones, besides being a Rotarian, is a member of a church, a fraternity order, or a political party, or a charitable organization or a professional association, of a local chamber of commerce, or of a league for or against prohibition, or a society, or against lowering the tariff, or of a golf club. The opinions which he receives as a Rotarian, he will tend to dissimulate as the other groups in which he may have influence. The individual intertwining structure, grouping, and associations in their mechanism by which democracies have organized in group mind and simplified its mass thinking. To deplore the existence of such a mechanism is to ask for a society such as it never was and never will be. To admit that it exists, but expect that it shall not be used is unreasonable. Emil Ludwig represents Napoleon as ever on the watch for indication of public opinions, always listening to the voice of the people, a voice which defies calculation. Do you know, he said in those days, what amazes me more than all else, the importance of force to organize anything. It is the purpose of this book to explain the structure of the mechanism which controls the public mind, and to tell how it is manipulated by the special pleaders who seek to create public acceptance for a particular idea or commodity. It will attempt at the same time to find the due place in the modern democratic scheme for this new propaganda, and to suggest its gradual evolving code of ethics and practice. So that's chapter 1. I'm not going to go any more reading tonight. My voice has had its time. It's beginning to have its issues, which is fine, which I've done quite a bit of reading today. Again, this is the book by Edward Bernays, Propaganda. It's interesting on the front page. I didn't see this, but I want to share this something else. This is a quote from Noam Chomsky. Bernays' honest and practical manual provides much insight into some of the most powerful and influential institutions of a contemporary industrial state capitalist democracies. Interesting that Noam Chomsky would say that, because he is one of them also. Most people are not aware of that, but he is. But anyway, we'll come back another day and do this. It's about time for me to say goodnight. It's approaching 10 o'clock, so I just want to share this information with you guys tonight. Thank you for listening. Again, you're welcome to share your ideas, your points, whatever you want to share on here. It's open. I wish you a good night and a good day tomorrow. Okay, take care. Have a good night.